Hi, I'm Nicholeen Peck. Are you thinking about eating issues today? In this video, I'm going to be talking about at what age should children eat independently? No matter if you have a toddler or if you have an older child who you want them to start being more independent with their food preparation and consumption, this is a good video for you. We're going to be talking about the developmental stages of eating and help your child be more independent in some of their eating behaviors. I'm a mother of 4 children, and I adamantly believed at the very beginning I'm not going to be running a cafe and I'm not going to be spoon feeding everyone for their entire existence in my home. If there is one thing that is one of the basic things for human life, it's eating, getting the food into your mouth. Now, I know there are some people who have maybe some physical things, limitations that would hold them back from being able to eat independently. But for most people, they can take steps in that direction. And so what I'd like to discuss is specifically related to small children, toddlers, how to help get them eating independently. But then also after that, to be discussing our older children. How do we help them start taking more responsibility for food preparation and eating the right kinds of things? So that's my focus that I'm going to be taking in this video today. This video idea started because somebody actually asked in a comment on the channel, importance of comments there, asked in a comment on the channel how to help their child because their child was 2 years old, still sitting on their lap at the dinner table and wouldn't sit by themselves to eat. And they were wondering, when can I expect my child to sit by themselves and just eat the food themselves? So obviously getting a little bit tired of the child getting in the way of all of the food and that kind of thing. Now, some of that has to do with the training that happened ahead of time. So this is kind of like a little bit of bad news, but it's important to recognize that all learning is incremental, okay? Bit by bit, we feel comfortable with one thing and then we learn something new, feel comfortable with something else, and then we learn something new. Just so you know, the skill of eating actually has a lot of confidence in its base. So when you're going to become independent in your eating, it's because you've tried something again and again, you've developed confidence in it, and so then you choose to trust it, whether it's a food item or whether it's a type of eating or even a place where you eat. So if you are adjusting your location all the time as you're eating, if you're eating at this restaurant and then this restaurant and then maybe at grandma's house and then maybe at your house and in the car, in the seat, in the car, whatever, and you're adjusting all the time where you're eating food, then that child does not get the opportunity to feel comfortable. So small children especially need a predictable eating environment. This is my chair or my booster seat, and this is my dinner table and my blue plate, and they need those types of things to feel comfortable with their eating. Otherwise, they get too distracted and they don't feel like they can trust the eating environment. So as we're talking about preparing toddlers especially to eat on their own, it's super important that we remember that we've got to schedule our lives in such a way and schedule our meals in such a way that there is a predictability that happens. So if you're going to be picking up takeout food or whatever, then literally do take it out maybe. Take it home and come back to the booster seat or back to the high chair to eat that food so that they have that permanence and they can, decide that this is an okay place to eat and I can work on my project here. And they're not distracted by other things going on around them or feeling insecure because it's cold or it's a new environment or a new food. Another thing that you're going to do is starting really young, if you can, it is way better for you to have a child in a high chair or in a booster seat at the table. I know that seems like a burden, sometimes even a space problem for some people, depending on if they have, an apartment that's small or something like that. But if you can figure out a way for your child to have a designated seat just to eat at, it is going to help. So I was able to transition my children directly from a high chair to a booster seat at the table because they were used to always sitting by themselves and having elbow room and stuff like that as they ate. Now I say that knowing that I was a nursing mother, okay? So when the children were tiny, I would nurse them. But when it was time to eat, for everyone else, I would not nurse my child during eating time at the table. So I didn't make it so that eating time at the table meant that the baby was going to be sitting on my lap. Always eating time, the baby or the toddler had their own place to sit, and everyone would look at each other's faces and talk as we ate together. It's important to establish that culture. If you haven't done that yet, it could seem a little bit painful at first to get that culture established, but it is possible to do. So right now, decide, where is everybody's spot at the table, okay? That's an important thing. It may seem old-fashioned or funny to do, but you know what? Give everybody, this is your chair, this is your chair, this is your chair. And maybe even have, this is your cup. You get to eat on blue, at the table. And then say, okay, now we're going to put this special booster here. Maybe you even go to the store, have a special shopping trip for it. You get them their special seat. And at first, I would make sure it's got a strap. Okay, so that you can strap them in. So it can strap to the chair or to the counter, but also they can be strapped into it. Because at first they won't want to stay there. They will want to come with you, and you'll have to say, it's okay, stay there, you'll be all right. You may have to have a couple of meal times with a child who's not happy and maybe doesn't even want to eat a ton right then, in order for them to learn, okay, this is where I sit to eat when everybody eats. This is part of our culture, and it's okay. You have to environmentally train them like that. And so sometimes it can make for a couple of bad nights, but just prepare for that. It's totally okay. Just tell yourself it's okay if they are not happy. And if they have to have mostly a sippy cup for that meal because they didn't want to sit in it, then oh well, all the better. I might start your transition with breakfast. I don't know if your family eats breakfast together, but if they do, that could be a really great way to start it, because then the child's, it's not right before bed. You can fill in with snacks and stuff a little bit later if you have to, but the point is to teach them to be there with you. Now, this is an instruction, so over time, if they learn how to follow an instruction, which is one of the teaching self-government skills that we teach, then you obviously can also correct them when they don't follow instructions and praise them when they do follow instructions to actually sit in their special seat at the table. Now, eating the dinner, like actually putting the food in the mouth, that's a totally different thing. Before we talk about putting food in the mouth for our little ones and how to help our older ones be more independent in their skills associated with meal preparation and consumption as well, hit that subscribe button. There are so many videos on this channel that relate to self-government, child development, good communication, and bonding as a family. You're not going to want to miss those, so subscribe now. I could probably do an entire video just on how to get the child to eat the food, but I'm going to give just a few parameters right here because I do want to take some time to talk about the older children. With the younger children who are picky, who don't want to eat food, I guess we could say sometimes older people are picky too, right? Spouses can be picky. There are some things that you can do to help them want to try new things and eat some of that food that they may be a little bit resistant to. Now, again, going back to the early years, it is really good if you grind up food for babies. So grind up your food that you're eating at dinner as opposed to always just feeding them the manufactured, same tasting stuff that's a little bit more bland. So if you can teach them to like flavors earlier on, that is the better. I mean, obviously transition them into the rice cereal, the fruits, the veggies, then the little meats, but then like grind it up. Just start grinding up the things. If you're having chicken for dinner, put a little bit of water with it in a grinder and grind it up. And it seems gross, but feed that to the children as opposed to the stuff out of the jars, because that's going to be real flavors, and you want to start getting them used to real flavors when they have no idea what they're even eating in the first place. That way it will be common flavors for them. This is how everybody does it around the world. They start feeding their child the things they eat and that they like, and then the child likes them. So why do some children like fish and other children don't like fish? Well, it's actually because it's usually whether they had fish or not when they were little, right? That's a big thing. And is it culturally part of their lives to have fish? So we need to teach our children to like certain things, but sometimes they don't like things. They don't want to have, broccoli, maybe that's a really common one, or asparagus or something like that. So how do we handle that then? So I do teach my children how to follow instructions, and they know that when it comes to food time that they do have to follow instructions, but I don't overdo it, okay? So following instructions, there are 5 steps to that skill. I'm not going to go into those right now, but they know how to be calm and follow through with the instruction and be okay with whatever it is. But like I said, I'm not going to push it too heavy on them because I don't want them to get a bad association with food or feel forced to eat food too much, because that can actually create some psychological damage, which isn't very good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give them an instruction to eat 3 bites if they are 3 years old. So I would say, okay, I'm going to give you an instruction. I need you to eat 3 bites because you're 3, okay? And then they would be like, okay. And so then they would eat 3 bites because they'd think, I am 3, I can handle 3 bites. So that's how we did it at first. Eat as many bites as old as you are, and after that, you don't have to eat anymore. I think we need to sometimes respect, they have to test the waters multiple times. In fact, it's super important to know that a person has to eat something 16 times usually before they decide that they like it. 16 times. That's a lot. So that means we're going to have to offer our children the same thing again and again and have them go, ah, and not want it again and again before finally they will decide that it's okay to eat that. Another thing that we did when our children were younger, and actually this carried on for quite some time, is I said, you know what? Sometimes we don't like something. All of us don't like something. We need to learn to try things because we get together socially with people for food, and it's really bad manners to not try things that people lovingly prepare for us, because we do a lot of travel and stuff like that in different places in the world, and I knew my children cannot just, turn up their noses at everything and think they're the best because this is what they like, because that's prideful and it's mean culturally to other people. And so I said, you can have one thing. Every person picks one thing. Be careful about what you pick, because that one thing, I will never make you eat it. But everything else you have to try no matter what. And so they thought carefully about what it was. And my son said beets. I don't want to eat beets, which I don't understand because I love beets. But anyway, that's what he said. And I said, okay, you don't have to eat beets. And you know what's funny is he actually does eat beets now. So that one didn't last. But that was his one thing, and somebody else picked sardines, which wasn't super smart because I don't like sardines and I'm never going to serve them. But if we get them served somewhere else by somebody else, then, I guess everybody else will have to try them except for that one person. Anyway, they all picked their one thing and I just held to that. So they felt like they had some control over, having something that they dislike and that was okay. But then everything else, they would give it a chance. This was super beneficial for the children as they were growing and learning with their food skills. So let's talk about the older children and helping them develop some of the skills to prepare their own food and pick good foods. So I do believe in living healthy. One thing that I did to try to make sure that my children would develop a taste for good fresh foods is I did grow a garden. We have a small orchard at our home, a small vineyard, and a very large garden. And so we grew all kinds of things, nuts and fruits and berries and vegetables and stuff. And so we were always bringing those things to the table, right? Farm to table kind of a thing right there on our property. And they would work in the yard with me, watch the stuff grow, test it, sample it in the yard as they would be seeing it grow. So this developed a love for good kinds of foods. We also tried to encourage health in a way where we were always exercising as a family, going walking every day, or, going to do certain activities with other people. And I would talk about health and the importance of health and how good it is so that you can have more freedom in your life, to do more things. Now, this doesn't mean that I was controlling everything or shaming anyone or putting pressure on anybody with their health, but I did try to create that as a culture. And even though my husband does not eat very healthy because that's just like his thing, he loves all the cookies and the sweets and the meats and the cheeses and all the things, which some of them are okay sometimes, but like he eats a lot of those. And I was like the vegetables and the whatever. My children did see the wisdom in having a balance in their diet because they did see that I was constantly, preparing those things. And even though Dad didn't like them, he would put a little some on his plate. And they also saw, it's limiting if you don't eat what people prepare for you. And so they did learn to like some good things. I also made sure that the snacks on hand, that it was like, oh, we're gonna have snacks. And I would buy healthy things that were also like really special things, right? So if I wanted them to eat some nuts as opposed to some candy bars or something, then I'm gonna buy these cute little nut packs. So it's like, that's more fun, right? We made our own fruit leather that didn't have all kinds of preservatives in it, so that they would get the taste for something fun and something good that wasn't just laced with sugar. Anyway, those kinds of things were really important. So they started making more healthy choices in their eating, which I think was really huge. It's also really important not to serve your children too large of proportions. So if you serve your child too large of proportions when they're small and you start forcing them to eat those large proportions, then they actually can develop a really unhealthy problem with proportion sizes and how much they will eat. You know, they can happen anyway when there's multiple siblings and they're like, I want the last of that. And so they eat tons and tons and they want more for the taste, you know, which definitely happened growing up in my family. You know, there were so many of us and some people would eat more than others. And so we were always worried, am I going to get any more of this? And so we would eat too much, which was not good. Proportion size is super important. And then when your children dish out their things and buy things for themselves in college and stuff, then they'll be buying smaller proportions, which is going to be better for them overall health-wise. But let's talk about independence in making the food. If you want your children to start making their own food, you've got to cook with them. You can't just serve everything up all the time. You've got to be part of the process. So my children had their own cook nights and they also cooked with me. So especially starting early on, even when they were tiny, by the time they were 6, I was letting them cut certain vegetables and stuff with knives, because I wanted them to learn the skills for how to find their way around a kitchen. So cook with the children, have them be part of it, and then as they get older, give them cook nights where they cook for the family. As they start cooking more and more for the family, then soon they will start cooking more things for themselves as well. So there were certain times, like lunchtime was a time where I would say, hey, everybody, you can make whatever you want, right? And so that was, you make your own thing. And whether they want to be lazy, just do a little sandwich, eat a piece of fruit because they don't want to put any work in, fine. But sometimes it was like, no, I'm going to make noodles and I'm going to make this. And, you know, and they would start putting things together because it was their time to create something that they wanted during that time. So lunch is a beautiful time for that. It worked out really well for us because we were always home at lunchtime because we were a homeschool family. But you could figure out another time. Maybe breakfast is that time for you. A lot of families like the bookends, though, to eat together, like breakfast and dinner. So see if you can figure out, maybe it's Sunday afternoon or something like that, where they just get to kind of cook for themselves. See if you can figure out what works for your family on that front, because as they do more and more of that, they will actually start to take more responsibility for preparing their food and they won't look to you for it. Don't serve them everything all the time. Serve them at dinner when everyone's at the dinner table, or let them serve you too, because it's always a sign of love to serve food to another person. But don't be having them depend upon it, because that will create entitlement and that goes against what you want for those older eaters. If you have enjoyed this video, I know you're going to love the next video, which is a full-length class all on self-government. It's going to go into a lot more detail about some of the skills that I've been alluding to here in this video. And that video is called The Not So Known Secret for Parenting Success. So click on the link to that video now, and I will see you there.